All right, so are you ready for this? We're diving into some pretty interesting stuff today.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because we're talking about the potential for a Trump victory, in the upcoming election.
Mm-hmm.
And we are just days away from the big day.
I know.
It's crazy. And polls are showing a real nail-biter between Trump and Kamala Harris.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So,
absolutely.
To unpack this, we have some pretty interesting source material today.
Okay.
It's a recent interview that Piers Morgan did.
Oh, wow.
On Fox News.
Interesting.
He's known for his no-holds-barred interviewing style.
For sure.
And, of course, his history with Trump.
Yeah.
So,
what
do you think? Pretty fascinating choice for analysis.
Well, yeah, I mean, given those points you just highlighted,
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how their past relationship might influence the conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And get this, Morgan actually predicts a landslide victory for Trump.
Wow.
He even compares it to the comebacks of Frank Sinatra and Tiger Woods.
Seriously.
I know, right?
That's a bold statement.
So the big question that we're going to explore today is this.
Yeah.
What leads Morgan to such a bold prediction when many consider Trump an underdog in this race?
It's certainly provocative.
Right.
Especially given the current political climate.
Yeah.
I'm particularly interested in exploring what evidence he uses to support such a claim.
Well, he starts by talking about this sense he has of a growing wave of support for Trump.
Really?
He claims he's picking up on it even among people who didn't vote for him in the past.
Interesting.
And to support this, he even shares anecdotes from his travels in L.A. and New York, suggesting a shift in public opinion.
Okay.
What about you? Have you noticed anything similar in your own interactions?
Well, it is interesting to consider whether there might be a disconnect between what we're seeing in national polls and what's happening on a more personal level.
Yeah.
These anecdotal experiences, while intriguing, don't necessarily represent the broader electorate.
That's true.
It's important to look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And consider factors like voter turnout and demographic shifts.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Individual experiences don't always reflect the whole story. But Morgan also challenges the prevailing narrative.
Does he?
That the world dislikes Trump. Yeah. And he points to conversations he's had with world leaders, specifically mentioning the president of Poland and former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now, that's a particularly intriguing point.
Right.
Johnson in particular is quoted as describing Trump as charming, and courteous.
I know.
That's a stark contrast to the image often portrayed in the media.
I know, it's so different.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if perhaps Trump's leadership style, which can come across as quite blunt, might play differently on the world stage.
How so?
Well, maybe it might be interpreted as strength or decisiveness in international relations, where those qualities are often valued.
It's an interesting thought how different contexts can shape perceptions of leadership. What might be considered a negative trait in one arena could be seen as a positive in another.
Yeah.
It speaks to the complexities of leadership and how different situations call for different approaches.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then Morgan gets into what he sees as Trump's core strengths.
Okay. What are those?
He argues that Trump's laser focus on certain key issues resonates deeply with voters.
Like what?
Specifically, he highlights the economy and immigration.
Oh.
And he believes voters trust Trump more than Harris to address concerns like the cost of living and to take a tougher stance on immigration.
This is where we start to see the connection to the everyday lives of voters.
Right.
Those are issues that hit close to home for many people.
Yeah, for sure.
The rising cost of living, concerns about border security.
Yeah.
These are topics that generate strong emotions and can heavily influence voting decisions.
Exactly. It's about connecting with people's anxieties and concerns, offering solutions that resonate with their lived experiences.
Yeah.
And according to Morgan, Trump seems to be doing just that.
It's important to consider, though, whether this perception of Trump as the solution is rooted in reality or if it's more about the way he frames the issues.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
We need to look beyond the rhetoric and examine the actual policies being proposed.
Yeah.
Are they feasible? Are they effective? And what are the potential consequences? These are all critical questions to consider.
Precisely.
Yeah.
We need to move beyond gut feelings and look at the facts and potential outcomes.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got this perceived surge in Trump support.
Yeah.
A more nuanced global view than we might expect.
Right.
And Trump's focus on issues that really matter to voters.
Uh-huh.
But Morgan doesn't stop there.
Oh.
He brings up this fascinating concept of the comeback narrative.
What's that?
He draws a parallel between Trump potentially returning to power and the incredible comebacks of Sinatra and Tiger Woods.
That's a clever rhetorical move.
I know.
He's tapping into our natural fascination.
Yeah.
With stories of redemption and triumph over adversity.
Right.
It plays into this image of Trump being written off back in 2022.
Yeah.
Only to defy the odds and claw his way back to the top.
It's like a classic underdog story, right?
Exactly.
The fallen hero rises from the ashes to reclaim his glory.
And those stories have a powerful pull on our emotions.
They do.
They inspire us.
Yeah.
They give us hope.
Right.
And in the context of an election,
Yeah.
that could be a very potent tool.
So is Morgan simply playing into this narrative to create a more compelling argument? Or is there real substance to his claim?
That's the question we need to delve into.
Right.
Is this a genuine resurgence of support for Trump, driven by policy preferences and anxieties?
Yeah.
Or is it more about the emotional appeal of the comeback narrative?
You've got a lot to unpack here.
We certainly do.
Yeah.
Morgan has laid out some intriguing points, and it's going to be fascinating to dissect them further.
Let's dig deeper into some of these key issues.
Sounds good.
We'll start by unpacking Morgan's claims about Trump's strengths and how they're resonating with voters.
Sounds like a great place to start.
Yeah.
We need to go beyond the surface level and really analyze those claims.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So picking up where we left off, let's unpack Morgan's assertion that Trump's focus on key issues is a major driving force behind his potential resurgence.
Yeah.
He specifically highlighted the economy and immigration.
And he didn't shy away from getting into specifics either.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, he brought up Trump's signature policies like the border wall and his stance on sanctuary cities, arguing that those resonate strongly with a certain segment of voters.
It's interesting how Morgan connects these issues to the current political landscape.
Yeah.
He points to the unfinished border wall and the ongoing debates surrounding sanctuary cities as evidence that these concerns haven't gone away. In fact, he argues they've become even more prominent in the minds of some voters.
Yeah. It's almost like he's saying, look, these issues that I was talking about back in 2016 are still front and center.
Right.
And I'm the one who can address them.
Exactly. He's drawing a direct line between the anxieties that fueled his previous campaign and the challenges people are facing today.
Yeah.
But the question is, are those anxieties justified?
Right.
And are Trump's proposed solutions realistic and effective?
That's where things get a bit more complicated.
Yeah.
It's easy to tap into people's fears and frustrations, but offering viable solutions is another matter entirely.
And we need to consider the broader context here.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Well, the world has changed significantly since 2016.
That's true.
We're dealing with a global pandemic, economic uncertainty, and shifting geopolitical dynamics.
Right. A lot has happened.
Exactly.
And simply recycling old solutions might not be the answer.
Precisely. We need to look at the current situation with fresh eyes.
Okay.
And consider a range of perspectives.
So while Morgan emphasizes the appeal of Trump's stance on these hot-button issues, we need to critically evaluate whether his approach is truly effective and beneficial in the long run.
Absolutely. It's not just about appealing to emotions.
Right.
It's about offering realistic and sustainable solutions.
Now, Morgan also delves into the economic anxieties that many people are feeling. He points to the rising cost of living as a major concern for voters.
And he cites polls suggesting that voters trust Trump more than Harris to handle the economy.
Interesting.
This taps into a broader sentiment we've been seeing.
What's that?
A sense that the current administration isn't effectively addressing the economic challenges people are facing.
It's about that fundamental question of who can people trust to improve their lives, to put food on the table and ensure their financial security.
And for some, Trump represents that sense of stability and economic prosperity, even if it's based on a nostalgic view of the past.
It's interesting how Morgan weaves these different threads together.
Yeah, what do you mean?
The anxieties about immigration and the economy, the sense of dissatisfaction with the status quo, and the appeal of a leader who promises to shake things up.
He's creating a narrative that resonates with a certain segment of the population, a narrative that paints Trump as the solution to their problems.
But it's crucial for us as informed citizens to look beyond the rhetoric and examine the substance behind those claims.
Absolutely. We need to ask ourselves,
Yeah.
what are the concrete policies being proposed? What evidence supports their effectiveness?
And what are the potential consequences, both intended and unintended?
These are the questions that need to be front and center as we navigate this election cycle.
Moving on, Morgan also touched upon a rather surprising aspect of Trump's persona.
Oh, really? What's that?
His interactions with global leaders.
This is where things get particularly intriguing.
Right.
He challenges the common perception of Trump as being universally disliked on the world stage.
He even brought up those quotes from Boris Johnson describing Trump as charming and courteous,
Right.
which definitely goes against the grain of how Trump is often portrayed.
It raises the question of whether our understanding of Trump's international relationships is perhaps too simplistic.
Interesting.
Could it be that his blunt style,
Yeah.
which can be polarizing at home, is perceived differently by world leaders, accustomed to a certain level of directness and diplomacy?
It's a fascinating point. Maybe what we see as abrasive or undiplomatic is interpreted as strength or authenticity on the global stage.
And perhaps those qualities, while controversial,
Yeah.
could actually be effective in certain negotiations.
Now, of course, there's a flip side to that coin.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Trump's direct approach has also led to strained relationships and heightened tensions with some countries.
Absolutely. It's a complex picture with both potential benefits and drawbacks.
Right.
It's important to consider the full spectrum of outcomes when evaluating Trump's foreign policy.
So we've got this intriguing juxtaposition. Trump as the tough-talking negotiator who can get things done, but also the unpredictable force who can ruffle feathers and disrupt alliances.
It makes you wonder how those contrasting elements might play out if he were to return to the White House.
Right.
Would he be able to navigate those complexities effectively?
Yeah.
Or would his approach lead to further instability on the world stage?
Those are some pretty weighty questions, and I'm not sure there are easy answers.
I agree.
But it's definitely something we need to consider as we weigh the potential implications of a Trump victory.
Absolutely. It's not just about domestic policy.
Right.
It's about understanding how a potential Trump presidency would impact global dynamics and America's role in the world.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've explored the anxieties that Morgan believes are fueling support for Trump, the potential appeal of his approach to the economy and immigration,
Right.
and the complexities of his interactions on the world stage. But there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to examine.
What's that?
Morgan's claims about Trump's perceived strengths.
Let's dive into that. Morgan made some specific arguments about what he sees as Trump's key assets and how they resonate with voters.
Right, he emphasized certain qualities that he believes set Trump apart from the competition.
And it's worth noting that these perceived strengths are often intertwined with the anxieties and concerns we've already discussed.
Yeah.
They feed into each other, creating a narrative that can be quite compelling for certain voters.
So let's unpack those strengths and see how they fit into the larger picture. What exactly is Morgan highlighting?
Well, he starts by talking about Trump's authenticity, arguing that people are drawn to his willingness to speak his mind, even if it's not always politically correct.
Right. It's that tell it like it is persona that resonated with many voters in 2016.
And Morgan suggests that this quality is still appealing to a segment of the electorate who feel disillusioned with traditional politicians and their carefully crafted messages.
It's that desire for someone who seems genuine, someone who isn't afraid to challenge the status quo, even if it ruffles some feathers.
Exactly. And it's interesting how this perceived authenticity ties into the anxieties we discussed earlier.
How so?
Well, for those who feel unheard or ignored by the political establishment, Trump's outspokenness can be seen as a refreshing change.
It's like he's giving voice to their frustrations, validating their concerns in a way that other politicians don't.
And that can create a powerful emotional connection, even if the substance behind the rhetoric is questionable.
It's important to remember that authenticity doesn't necessarily equate to effectiveness.
True.
Just because someone speaks their mind doesn't mean they have the right solutions or the ability to implement them successfully.
Absolutely. We need to look beyond the surface and critically evaluate the policies and proposals being put forward, regardless of how authentically they are presented.
So authenticity is one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
What else does Morgan highlight as a strength for Trump?
He also emphasizes Trump's business acumen, arguing that his experience in the private sector makes him uniquely qualified to handle the economy.
Right. It's that image of the successful businessman and fix the country's economic woes.
And it's a narrative that has resonated with some voters who feel that traditional politicians lack the practical experience needed to manage complex economic issues.
It's that belief that someone from outside the political establishment,
Right.
someone with a proven track record in the business world, can bring a fresh perspective and get things done.
But it's important to consider whether success in the private sector automatically translates to success in government.
Yeah, you're right. Governing a country is a very different beast from running a business.
Exactly.
It requires a different set of skills and a deep understanding of complex political and social dynamics.
And it's worth noting that Trump's business record is not without its controversies.
Exactly. We need to look beyond the carefully crafted image and examine the facts, both the successes and the failures.
And we need to consider whether his business experience is truly relevant to the challenges facing the country today.
Right.
Are the skills needed to negotiate a real estate deal the same as those needed to navigate a global pandemic or address climate change?
Those are good questions. It's easy to get caught up in the rhetoric and the appeal of a certain image, but we need to dig deeper and critically evaluate the substance behind those claims.
Absolutely. We need to move beyond gut feelings and look at the evidence, the track record, and the potential consequences of different approaches.
Okay, so we've got authenticity and business acumen.
Right.
What else does Morgan point to as a strength for Trump?
He also emphasizes Trump's ability to connect with voters on an emotional level.
Oh.
He argues that Trump understands their anxieties and frustrations in a way that other politicians don't.
Right. He's talking about that ability to tap into people's fears and desires to speak to their gut feelings rather than their intellect.
And it's a skill that shouldn't be underestimated. In an election, emotions often play a more significant role than logic or policy details.
You're right. It's about connecting with people on a visceral level, making them feel seen and heard, even if the solutions being offered are simplistic or unrealistic.
And Trump has proven to be quite adept at this kind of emotional manipulation.
In what way?
He's able to tap into existing resentments and anxieties, painting himself as the savior who can rescue people from their perceived threats.
It's a powerful tactic, especially when combined with the other strengths we've discussed.
Yeah?
The perceived authenticity, the business experience, and the willingness to challenge the status quo.
It creates a potent cocktail that can be very intoxicating for voters who are looking for someone to shake things up.
Right.
Someone who promises simple solutions to complex problems.
But again, we need to be cautious about getting swept up in the emotional appeal of this narrative.
Sure.
We need to ask ourselves, are these emotions being manipulated for political gain?
Yeah.
Are the solutions being offered realistic and sustainable?
Those are crucial questions. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement and the promise of change, but we need to be discerning and critical.
So we've got this complex interplay of perceived strengths, anxieties, and emotional appeals.
Right.
It's a potent mix that has the potential to sway voters even in the face of contradictory evidence or questionable policies.
And it's a reminder that elections are often decided not by logic or reason, but by emotions, gut feelings, and a desire for something different, even if that something different is ultimately detrimental.
Okay, so we've dissected Morgan's claims about Trump's strengths and how they resonate with voters. We've explored the anxieties that fuel his support, the perceived authenticity and business acumen that attract some voters, and the emotional manipulation that can sway hearts and minds. But there's still one big question looming over all of this.
And that is, are these perceived strengths enough to propel Trump back to the White House?
Exactly. We've examined the pieces of the puzzle, but now we need to see how they fit together.
And we need to consider the broader context, the political landscape, the demographics, the events that have shaped this election cycle.
And perhaps most importantly, we need to hear from the voters themselves.
Right.
What are their hopes? What are their fears? What are their priorities?
Those are the voices that ultimately matter.
They are.
The polls and the pundits can offer their predictions, but it's the people who will decide the outcome of this election.
So let's shift our focus now and delve into the perspectives of those who will be casting their ballots.
Let's hear from the voters themselves and try to understand the motivations and anxieties that are shaping their decisions.
I think it's time we hear directly from some of those voters.
Okay.
We've got some fascinating interviews lined up that offer a glimpse into the hearts and minds of the American electorate.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Let's get those perspectives and see how they align with the narrative Morgan has presented.
Sounds like a plan. Let's dive into those interviews and see what insights we can glean. Well, we've spent this deep dive exploring Piers Morgan's perspective on the upcoming election and his bold prediction of a Trump landslide.
Yeah, we've unpacked a lot.
We have.
Like his arguments about the perceived surge in Trump support, his analysis of Trump's controversial leadership style, and how it plays on the world stage, and his emphasis on the power of the comeback narrative.
Right. And we also delved into the key issues that Morgan believes are driving this potential resurgence, from anxieties surrounding immigration and the economy to the appeal of Trump's perceived authenticity and business acumen.
Right. And we examined those emotional undercurrents at play in this election.
Yeah.
How Trump seems to connect with voters on a visceral level, tapping into their fears and frustrations.
So as we approach the final days before the election, the question remains.
Yeah, what kind?
Is Piers Morgan's prediction accurate?
Right.
Is he simply engaging in wishful thinking? Or is his perspective grounded in a deep understanding of the forces shaping this election?
It's a question that only time will tell.
Yeah.
But we can certainly draw some key takeaways from our analysis of his perspective.
Absolutely. First and foremost, Morgan's insights highlight the importance of understanding the emotional drivers behind political choices.
Right.
It's not always about policy details or rational arguments.
As we've seen, emotions often play a more significant role than logic in shaping voters' decisions.
Yeah.
And Trump, with his ability to tap into anxieties and offer simple solutions to complex problems, seems to have mastered the art of emotional appeal.
Morgan also reminds us that elections are rarely about a single issue or even a handful of issues.
That's true.
They're about narratives, about stories that resonate with people's hopes and fears.
And the comeback narrative that Morgan highlights is a powerful one.
It is.
It taps into our natural fascination with redemption and triumph over adversity.
Yeah.
It offers a glimmer of hope in uncertain times.
But as we've discussed, it's crucial to look beyond the allure of such narratives and critically evaluate the substance behind them.
Exactly.
Authenticity doesn't necessarily equate to effectiveness.
Right.
And business acumen doesn't automatically translate to success in government.
We need to examine the policies, the track record, and the potential consequences of different approaches rather than getting swept up in the emotional currents of the moment.
So as we head into these final days before the election, let's all commit to being informed and engaged citizens.
Yeah.
Let's critically evaluate the information we encounter, engage in thoughtful dialogue, and respect the diverse perspectives that shape our political landscape.
Let's remember that this election is about more than just choosing a candidate.
It is.
It's about shaping the future of our nation.
And it's a future that we all have a stake in. So stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay engaged.
Great advice.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure. Until next time.
Keep exploring.
Keep questioning.
And keep learning.